Okay, we are here again for Perspective on Athletics, and today we have Bill Fusco with us. And Bill is the Director of Athletics at Sonoma State University. Bill, I really appreciate you taking time and joining us today.
Well, thanks, Mark. It's a real pleasure and always great to talk to you, and looking forward to a great conversation.
It is going to be great. And Bill, yeah, you and I go back, I don't know how long, but we've seem to have known each other quite a long time. And I really appreciate you joining us here today. But for those that don't know you as well as I do, why don't you give us a brief sketch of your career track and where you've been and how you ended up at Sonoma State?
Well, I've been around for a long time, but very fortunate to have my professional career all in the San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California, and that's been just a great experience. I've been at four different universities. Actually started as an undergraduate at the University of San Francisco, working in the Department of Athletics there as a student sports information director, business manager, ticket manager, traveling manager, everything that I could get my hands on. I was fortunate to graduate in 4 years and move on to St. Mary's College in Moraga, where I was the sports information director there, and just had a wonderful experience with the Gales. And 2 years there, and then back to University of San Francisco to be the full-time sports information director, not as a student. And got there at a great time during a great basketball era and soccer with Bill Cartwright and number one ranked Dons and four national championships in soccer. So that was really a wonderful time to be on the hilltop. And then actually through 9 years moved up the ranks inside the athletic department, sports information director, assistant athletic director, and then actually athletic director for about 4 years. And that was a very interesting type of scenario where I was thrown into pretty controversial type situation, and managed to survive for 4 years. Then at that point, actually, I took a break from intercollegiate athletics and went to work in Silicon Valley long before it was like the way it is now, and worked for a law firm that did venture capital work, and then actually went with a startup company and worked with them for 4 years, and kind of found my way back to athletics at Dominican University in San Rafael, and I was the athletic director there for about 6 years, and then up the road to Sonoma State, and I've been here now just starting my 18th year here.
Wow. Well, that is quite a run.
A long journey.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is that you've come up through athletic administration, starting on the communication sides, the SID role, and that is more untraditional than traditional, maybe. And was it something that once you got in and you were working in sports information, did you always want to be an athletic director, or did that kind of just naturally evolve?
It evolved because my goal was to become a media relations director of one of the professional teams, somewhere in California. And at one point, I got promoted to assistant athletic director at USF and started handling more of the business side of things, and got very interested in that, and then really found myself in the athletic director's seat and really liked the challenges that position brought, and that's where I ended up. I actually never thought my whole career would be as a director of athletics, but it's turned out that way, which has been great.
And here you go. Yeah, and you just mentioned 18th year at Sonoma State, right?
Yes.
And that's quite a run. And Sonoma State, that entire time, has been a Division II campus, and
Yes.
you've spent the majority of your administrative career at Division II. So I'm curious, I wanted to have us talk a little bit about kind of the world of Division II. And Division II lately has been growing. There's certainly been a strong branding effort. There's been a lot of good things happening within Division II. But I'm sure over your time at Sonoma State, you've seen a lot of transition and a lot of changes within the division. So I'm wondering if you might just talk a little bit about that. What was Division II? Where has it come from? And what are your thoughts on where it is today?
Well, I'm a strong believer in Division II. I really have enjoyed being associated with Division II. I've been very active with the Athletic Directors Association, several committees. I think Division II in the past, when I first got on board, has had some great leadership from Mike Racy, who's no longer with the NCAA, but he's passed the reins on to Terry Steve Greneau, and I believe she's doing an incredible job taking over for Mike. And I think that's a very strong, stable leadership in Division II. The division is in good financial shape, very steady growth, and very a lot of responsibility in who gets into Division II as part of that growth process. So I think Division II has just been one of the best run divisions, and we have to be careful about what we say because our 25 championships are funded by the success of Division I with the basketball championships, and but it's a great place to be, and it's really a good fit for our institution.
Yeah. What's interesting is I think about Division II, it used to be, people understood Division I, and then people identified Division III with, well, they're the ones that don't give scholarships. And then Division II seemed to be this, well, I guess it's in the middle, but people really didn't have a good understanding of what Division II was about. And I think that's changed considerably, obviously, since the branding initiative went through several years back. But looking back to those days, do you remember that time? And what are your thoughts about that, state of the division back, whenever that was 15, 20 years ago?
Well, I think it was a problem for Division II, and there were some really key decisions in terms of bringing in people from the outside for branding purposes to really establish a theme for Division II. And for the longest time, it was I chose Division II. And we're in the process of moving to a different type of a message that I think will be unveiled at the January convention in Washington, D.C. And but that really set the identity in place for Division II. You think of the words balance. That was a key identifier for Division II. They did some things that set the division apart from Division I and Division III. The sports festival. They've had some great championship experiences for student athletes at locations all over the country with fall, winter, spring sports festivals that rotate every 4 years. So I think that they've just done some things that have set them apart from the other two divisions very successfully.
Yeah, there sure is a big difference, and that was kind of my whole point, and you're right, a lot has changed. Sonoma State's a public university, several thousand students, and that typically seemed to be the type of institution affiliated with Division II. But not anymore. It seems like there are more and more private institutions making the transition, maybe coming from the NAIA into Division II where they find the most appropriate fit. But it no longer seems to be the state university offering partial scholarships. There are more and more private institutions.
Well, that's very true. And I think it's about 50-50 now in terms of the current makeup of Division II, public and private. And a lot of the California private schools have come into Division II, and it's become very competitive. The private schools are definitely taking it seriously. Some of the programs are very well funded and have been competitive immediately. And Cal Baptist University comes to mind. They've done an outstanding job of transitioning from the NAIA to Division II, and they were top 20 in the Directors Cup this year in their first year. So they're a force to be reckoned with, and there are many other private schools on the way. a number in the Bay Area and some in Southern California, and of course across the country. There are more private schools coming this way to Division II, and I think it's a good combination. That there's certainly a lot of incentive for a private school that's enrollment driven to be part of the NC2A and Division II. So I think it's a win-win for a school to come into this division.
Right. Well, it sure is an exciting time for Division II, and like you already mentioned, the growth is there. It's been pretty steady, and maybe more recently, it seems to have increased a little bit with more people wanting to join Division II, where at one time Division III was seeing more of an explosion in growth. And so I'm curious, you mentioned this too. You said it's becoming more, I think you said this, becoming more competitive to become a Division II member. And it seems like that is true, in that there have been a number of institutions who have applied to get into the provisional process and not been accepted. And I mean, what are your thoughts on that process and the fact that not everybody can just simply join Division II?
Well, a number of years ago, the Division II Athletic Directors Association, in conjunction with Division II, established a model Division II athletic department. And this was the blueprint for new schools to come into the NC2A to Division II. And the membership committee has pretty much followed this template. With some very stringent guidelines on what type of member they wanted in Division II. And they're holding these schools accountable from a personnel basis, from a sports sponsorship basis, from a facilities basis. And there's been, even some conversation about that it's the guidelines are more strict for incoming members than they are for current members. So, but we do a 5-year self-study on a rotating basis, and Division II has a way to assess the quality of the current programs. So it's balancing out, and what we're getting are more competitive programs, better funded programs, better facilities, staffing positions. We're moving away from the combined director of athletics, head coach type of position that still exists in Division II, and there are some successful programs that have that model, but we are moving away from those types of structures within the division.
Yeah. Well, it is an exciting time, as we've already mentioned, and what I find interesting and I think very positive for the division is that it used to be, again, similar to the problem Division III had. Division II may have been known as, well, it's not Division I, but you can still offer some scholarships. And now it seems people are not looking at it as a way to maintain their scholarship offerings, but they're finding the type of values that they want in their athletic program. You talked about balance, those types of things. And that's what people are talking about now, it seems, as they look at Division II instead of just the whole scholarship thing.
Well, that's a great point. And we like to think that we're a division where a student athlete that really wants to continue their competitive career can do it at a Division II school and still receive a scholarship and have a quality competitive experience. And without the pressure of winning versus losing and having coaches rotate in, we have coaches in our program. Our head baseball coach, John Geltz, is going to be in his 30th year, and he's done a tremendous job here. But there's just different types of pressures here. Pressure to raise money, pressure to recruit the best player possible, not necessarily the pressure to win, but the coaches put that pressure on themselves, and that's a good thing to a certain point. But Division II just offers a lot of opportunities without for lack of a better word, corporate win-at-all-costs atmosphere.
Right. But you did mention the pressures of fundraising or generating revenue, and I would imagine that that can be challenging because in terms of corporate dollars or even a wide fan base, you don't have the same type of environment you might have at Division One. And on top of that, Sonoma State being in kind of the heart of the Bay Area, you've got several professional teams, you've got other larger Division One universities. I would imagine that there are challenges and you need to be very creative.
Well, we try everything in terms of what we call revenue generation. It's not just fundraising. Revenue generation is camps, clinics, fundraising events, of course, anything that brings revenue into the program. And you do have to be creative, and our coaches have done a great job fundraising either through camps, special events, and it's an ongoing battle. It's something we work on every day in terms of generating dollars for scholarships, for facilities. Being a state university, we don't have access to bond money like the community colleges or the high schools. So we're at a disadvantage that way in terms of resources. But we're just in the process of finishing off a beautiful indoor baseball training facility. That was made possible through a major gift to the program, about a $1.3 million gift. So a few of those things really help out, definitely.
Yeah. Well, you've been at the Division One level, as we talked about at USF, Division Two at Sonoma State, NAIA, is where Dominican was when you were
Yes.
there. As you look at the role of the athletic director at those three different levels, what do you think is similar or different about the position?
Well, I think the common denominator is leadership, that you have to establish yourself as a leader. And there are, of course, many different styles for leadership. And I think that was the thread between those three institutions where I was an athletic director. And it's very different. At USF at the time, it was a mid-major. I mean, basketball and soccer were the major sports. We were just starting to develop women's sports at that time. So, in essence, USF back in the 80s is probably a lot similar to what Sonoma State is now. In a few instances, we're not playing Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame from South Bend in basketball like we did at USF, but at Dominican at the time it was very smaller than it is today, and so there was part-time coaches and student athletes that I knew on a first-name basis. We weren't a big department, and that was called for a different type of leadership than what I do now. And but in the end, just the communication skills, all those things were key in terms of holding those positions.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I think as you know, really the major purpose of this website, Perspective on Athletics, is to provide resources for people to grow and develop and to share information. And I know that you've been a part of a program within Division II that offers mentoring to younger athletic directors and others aspiring, I believe. So I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about that, because professional development is so critical, I think, to the future of the industry. But tell us a little bit about the mentoring program.
Well, it's a program that I've been very fortunate to be a part of. The Division II Athletic Directors Association and NCAA Division II have partnered to put a program together for minorities and women who aspire to be athletic directors. So most likely they're associate or assistant athletic directors currently. And you basically get 10 mentees, assistant or associate athletic directors, paired up with 10 athletic directors in Division II. And we have a meeting at the beginning of the program. It's a one-year program. We meet in Indianapolis for about a day and a half and get to know each other, talk about concepts. The NCAA brings in some guest speakers, which are always excellent. And then we design a program over the course of the year to communicate, and that could be in a lot of different forms. My last two mentees were on the East Coast, so we would set up a call every other week, even though there's a 3-hour time difference, and talk about current issues, answer questions, exchange information, talk about anything that was applicable to the day-to-day operations of a department. And this is the third year I've done it. The program's been going on for 4 years, and I learn a lot just being involved with it. And I've had 3 great mentees that are doing a great job at their current universities.
Well, as you mentioned, I think there's a lot in this for the mentees. They're getting the wisdom and advice of people like yourself. But I would imagine on the flip side, there's something rewarding about being able to provide this type of mentoring to younger people too.
Well, I definitely believe that, and I've been the beneficiary of that myself throughout my career, where I've had mentors from other universities, from within the university that I worked at, and it's just become a natural thing to offer that to people that are looking to get into the business and that want to be athletic directors at some point.
Mm-hmm. And while this program, it sounds like it's limited to 10 participants in a given year, but so not everybody is going to be fortunate enough to be a part of this program, but perhaps there's other ways. What would you say to somebody who applied for the program and just didn't get into those 10 slots?
Well, I think, and that's a great point, it is limited, but it's a good thing that it even exists. I think the best advice I can give to people that want to move forward is to talk to and connect with people that are currently athletic directors. And I do get a number of calls or emails from people that just want to talk about how do you get into the business, how do you get to be an athletic director. And there's no set answer. The most important thing, and it's typical of any industry, is getting a network together and talking to people, trying to get yourself into informational interviews. And when I was the athletic director at Dominican College at the time, I was fortunate enough to get an information interview with Ted Leland at Stanford. And he was just very generous with his time, and it was very inspirational for me to participate in something like that. And I've always thought that it was something I could do on my end to help others learn more about the business that we're in.
Right. While we're talking about this, people that are in these positions, associates or assistants, they can have these mentoring opportunities. But what about the young up-and-comer who doesn't have their first job yet? I always point out that there are literally now hundreds of graduate programs in athletic administration, sport management, whatever you want to call them. They're all over the map. But there are far more people graduating from these programs than there are actual jobs. And everybody wants to have an advantage, or somebody wants to know, well, what can they do to better position themselves to get that first job or to advance their career? And I'm sure you get these types of calls and visits too. What do you say to those people that are really looking for the way to get into the business?
I think it's something that you have to be persistent on. You have to keep communicating with different organizations and really keep your ear to the ground in terms of opportunities, because as we all know, a lot of opportunities open up without anybody ever knowing about them. So in a lot of respects, you have to have a good network of people that are looking out for you, or to get your foot inside an organization, whether you're volunteering, you get an internship. A paid internship is a great way to move into those types of positions. And I've seen a lot of people do that here and move on to other jobs. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You have to regroup and look at any potential opportunity that's out there. And the more flexible you are in terms of what part of the country you're willing to go to, there is definitely opportunity out there. It's just how much flexibility you have.
Yeah.
talked to one person that said, I do not want to leave the Bay Area. And you can't blame them for that. I mean, it's a great place to live. But they were going to have a tough time getting started because of that. And we have an associate AD here at Sonoma State, Brandon Bronson, who actually left California to work a job in minor league baseball and got some experience. And when our sports information job opened here, he had some good qualifications and we hired him. Consequently, he's moved up to an associate AD position. So,
and that's how it can go sometimes.
Definitely.
Yeah. What about landing that first job? You as an athletic director are responsible for hiring staff, and outside of coaches, you have other administrative positions. But when you do have an open position and you're interviewing candidates or screening candidates, are there things that you look for specifically, or are there things that set people apart when you're looking at a pool of candidates?
There's no question about that. I think the ability to go into an interview and have as much knowledge about the program as the people interviewing you it sounds a little far-fetched, but the more prepared you are in an interview, the more knowledge you have about the institution or the organization that you're interviewing with. Also in terms of first impression, how you look, how you conduct yourself in the interview. I was just recently on a phone interview for a senior management position here at the university in a different department. And on the phone interview, we couldn't get the candidate to stop talking. And they, unfortunately rambled on for quite a long time. And those are the things, if you know how to manage an interview process, concise answers, but complete answers. And those are key things. I think the interview process is the key. Getting, an effective resume is very crucial to get your foot in the door for an interview. That definitely helps. But and we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly with interviews here, and that's definitely a key factor.
Great. Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that. One other thing before we wrap up today, I always ask guests about their thoughts on leadership. And you've touched upon some of these things in your earlier comments. But as you think about leadership, and maybe specifically as it relates to athletics, but good leadership is good leadership. What do you think that looks like? What do you think is important for a good leader to have skill-wise, characteristics-wise? When you talk about leadership, what comes to mind?
Well, I think good communication and consistent communication is the key for myself. I try and keep everybody that works in the department up to speed on what's going on. We try and eliminate a lot of surprises. We try and be inclusive in terms of decision making. We put a lot of options out there for people to consider. One of the things that I like to do is walk around the facility and drop in on people and find out what they're doing, how they're doing things, what they're feeling about things. So it's nothing new. Management by walking around is the common phrase for it. And I think showing that you're fully committed to the program that yourself, that you're not afraid to roll up your sleeves and get the job done if that's what it takes to get the job done. And that's especially important at Division III, Division II, NAIA schools. And you've been there. Yeah. I've swept my share of gym floors as an athletic director, but I've also got up and talked in front of Rotary clubs with 300 people to promote the program. So you do what it takes to get the job done, and you get people to do what you want them to do, and for them to want to do it for you, if that makes sense. Yeah. But I think those are just a few things that really are important to me in terms of leading an organization.
Right. And I think you're right. As an athletic director, there really is no job too big or any job too small. It just has to get done.
Definitely.
Yeah. Bill, we've come to the end of our time, and it's unfortunate we could go on for days and hours talking about these things, but we've got to close up the show, and I wanted to just say thank you one more time for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Well, thanks, Mark, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation, and I think it's a great service to people that are interested in the profession, want to get in, and I hope you keep doing these types of things.
Will do, Bill. Thanks again. This has been Perspective on Athletics. Bill Fusco, Director of Athletics at Sonoma State University.